Mark Burns from Land Services and the Property Edge team. And this morning we're going to talk about some new updates, which I think are really exciting for the product. And as a matter of fact, we're going to do a walkthrough in regard to looking at listing a property. We're going to look at things like the stamped value, the meaning around that, doing some product ordering, and then we're going to complete a CMA, which I think is really super helpful. And then we're going to do a change up where we potentially are going to change the campaign, look at a suburb report if that is required as well. And then we're going to look at that from a perspective of marketing a campaign without a price. So Mark, welcome to the webinar and thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Pleasure. Thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully some of our listeners get something out of this as they go to work over the next 6 months.
Fantastic. Thank you. Over to you.
All right, Matt. I'm just going to share my screen. So 2 seconds. Just confirming, Andrew, you can see the map.
Confirm. Yep, absolutely.
Fantastic. So, Andrew, as you log into Property Edge, this is following the updates that we've just done, which went live last week. This is the new landing page that you'll come into. And for those who have used Property Edge in the past, the one main difference is now that you'll have a quick address search smack bang in the middle of the page. So to that end, let's jump straight into a live example. And in this example, I'm going to have a look at a property that I'm interested in. That's number 10. And you can see here the typing is preemptive. So you will actually, it would help if I put in the right address. All right, there we go. And straight away, this takes us to the address of the property in question. And the reason I've chosen this is just to highlight what Property Edge can do. And that is it can actually give you a gazetted understanding of what's happened with that particular property. So Andrew, with your background in real estate and our listeners' backgrounds in real estate, you can see here that this property was listed for sale back in 2015. It was on the market for 148 days. It was actually listed as sold by the agent in the advertising material. It actually never sold. So you can see here that it was last listed at 680. It was gazetted as a sale, it was advised as a sale product, a sale property. It actually never gazetted sale. So it didn't actually indeed sell until just recently on the 6th of November in 2023. It was done as a no monetary consideration. So I don't believe it was actually sold at true value of what the property is. And this is one of the features I wanted to show your listeners. It was sold for $0. So $0 is now 15% of all gazetted sales. Ours is the only platform that will give you an understanding of what the actual sale price was. Now, in this case, it was actually sold, or sorry, I'll explain that. It was actually sold for $0, and the stamp value that was listed, so that's the value that the new vendor of this property paid stamp duty on, was at $570,000. Now, not knowing the details, my suggestion here is that it was a transfer between parties and it was an off-market sale. So let's assume that that sale price was indeed closer to the $700,000 mark, or indeed even above that, and it was $0. There's a really good chance that that was actually the sale price, particularly when we're looking at residential properties. You can't be guaranteed that, but it gives you a good understanding.
Yeah.
So the reason we've got photos here is that it is still picking up, our program is still picking up the last listing program for the listing opportunity for the property, which was done by LJ Hooker back in 2015. And indeed, it picks up the property photos. Interestingly, because this property is actually never technically sold, our database has never been updated. So it's actually coming up with it comes up with the macros of the land size and the house size, but doesn't give you all of the details of the property attributes. I'll explain that in a moment.
Yeah.
Whilst you're on this page, you can actually see the listing and rental history of the property. So if this had been listed for rent, there would also be a rental history. But what it does do is it gives you the indicators here, which are gazetted. The nice one is the title. So it will actually confirm the exact title of what the property is. And more importantly, it confirms the gazetted address. This one's a really easy one. It's just a street number, but we all would have had examples where it's 1 of 10 or 10A or unit 10 or unit 1 of 10. And sometimes the address that the vendor gives us or the potential vendor gives us doesn't marry up with that. So this will tell you what the exact address is. On the right-hand side here too, every CT in South Australia has also been covered by which primary school or secondary school zone that property sits within, if it's zoned to a public school. Now, in this particular case, it's zoned to Roma Mitchell, and there's no zoning for a primary school. As a side note for your listeners, you can actually search all of the residential properties in a school zone as well, if that's of interest, and heat map that. That might be an example for another time.
Yeah.
As we come back here, so we can do a couple of things from this property. So let's assume we're about to appraise this property. On the order products up here, we can tick the order products. And the one I want to highlight here is the owner validation product. So the owner validation product is a product that we've brought in. It's only available via Property Edge. And I'll just click on example. Just confirm you can see that one for me, Andrew.
Yes,
thank you. So what this does is for $5, this gives the potential agent all of the information on that property. Most importantly, it gives you the property address, the title reference. It also gives you the address for notices. So if this property was an absentee property, it gives you the address for notices of the property. If, for argument's sake, the address for notices of this property was that particular LJ Hooker office, they rented it out. The address for notices would be the LJ Hooker office, most likely. It would then have another line, which was the address for notices of registered parties. So Mark Burns owns this, and it would actually be my PO box in Kensington Park. Yeah. The other nice part of this document is that it also gives you all of the registered proprietors. So if Mark had rung you up, Andrew, you were the potential listing agent, I'd rung you up, you quickly look up this and you see it's Mark and Joanne. You quickly realise that there's probably a good chance that Mark and Joanne aren't together or are soon not to be together because he hasn't mentioned Joanne. Now, whilst you still do your appraisal, clearly the Mark is not the only person who can sign a sales agency agreement or indeed a contract of sale, and you make those inquiries pretty quickly to ascertain. So Mark, is Joanne on the title? I noticed that she is. Is she going to be at the meeting? And straight away you understand that it's probably a divorce or a separation appraisal. And you handle that appropriately. Yeah. So this is the cheapest way we can make it, Andrew, so that as a listing agent, you have all of the information you require to do an appraisal. Indeed, there's all the information you require here to do a sales agency. And there's actually enough information here from a property perspective to actually do the contract as well, assuming there's no easements. So yeah. Let's go back to where we were. That's one of the products that we have got there, and you can order that product and simply add it to your cart. You can order any of these products, so you still may, if you still wanted to do your title valuation package for a contract and go straight to that because you were absolutely certain you were getting the listing, you could do that. But you can also do a couple of other things, including property research reports, valuation details, and excitingly now what you can also do is alerts. Yeah. So these alerts are a new product, once again, only available via Property Edge. And these alerts, as I click on Market Alert here, you can see here it actually does state what that means. Market Watch Alert for $1.95 gives you an alert on that particular property for 12 months. So in this particular case, let's assume you've appraised the property and it didn't go to market, but you want to keep an eye on the property to see what's happening. So with the market alerts on this particular property for 12 months, if that's how long you wish to stay there, within 1 second of about 5 different things happening on a title, you'll get an alert. And that's within real time. So within 1 second of something happening on the title, you get an alert. By example, when you appraise this might have been a subdividable property. Yeah. So to that example, if a DA appeared on the title as a planning application, so not the actual development application, just the planning application, within 1 second you would have that alert. So as a listing agent, that gives you a really good understanding that Mark hasn't spoken to you in the last 4 months. You'd spoken about that property potentially being subdivided, and indeed there is a good chance that may be on the cards. And in your regular call cycles you have with your client base, that may be something that you actually, or indeed that may actually give you the timing to actually insert one of your regular calls. So along those lines, you also get name changes, you get caveats being placed, you get products being ordered. So for instance, if a property research report was ordered on this property, you would see that. If a title details was ordered on the property, you would see that. And depending on which product that is, it can tell you different things. It may be that Mark's getting another appraisal. It may be that a finance broker is doing some work for refinancing. What it does is, though, all of those alerts, when they come in, they start to tell you a picture of that property. There's a second one that you can do here too, which is a development watch. It tends to be, we did this more for developers, but there are a lot of agents who work for developers, or indeed on a property like this, it may be that it's a development property that's going to go to market at some stage, and for 95 cents, that makes more sense to use that product. And that's more around the DA as zoning changes, and those sorts of things happening on a title, the things that you would like to be made aware of if it was a development property. And that gives you, once again, anything that happens on that property in those parameters within 1 second of that action on a title. As the subscriber, you get that within 1 second. So they are real-time alerts.
Yeah, they're virtually live, and it allows the agent to be extremely proactive and trigger those proactive calls to the vendor, potential vendor as well. So that's amazing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Once again, just as an aside, on those two products in particular, particularly MarketWatch, many of our agencies across South Australia, they actually use MarketWatch or an equivalent product we have, and they actually subscribe their rent roll. So they do that in terms of watching their rent roll on behalf of their landlords as a service, and for your exact point about being proactive to their rent roll. And indeed watching that rent roll for development applications, zone changings, changes in CV and SVs to give their landlords a heads up, and also to see if their landlords are actually have any intentions of transacting on that property. And clearly, as a property you have on your rent roll, that's something as a managing agency you would like to know sooner than after the effect.
That is absolutely correct.
All right, so I'm not going to go through the ordering process. Our listeners can do that at their own pace. Oh, sorry, as I go back, that was a user error. So let's just go back to property. And not working. Oh, man. There we go. So we're back to the property now. So the second thing we might want to do from here is you want to do an appraisal on the property. So what we can do from here too is create a report. So in this particular case, we're going to create a sales CMA. And for those who have used the program before, this is one of our major differences in the program. So straight away here, we now have the ability to have our cover page on the property. We have the ability to add and take away photos on the property. We have the property itself, and we have the sales history and comparable sales. So as I go through here, just out of interest, you can add images up to 3 at a time. You can alternate these images to what you wish to be. So you can change all of those to exactly how you wish them to be. Yeah. You can also actually really change your cover page. So in terms of settings, the cover page can be in a couple of styles. You can drop and drag whichever cover page photo you wish to have on there. You can actually change this each time to make it look like exactly what you want. So you'd have your own agency in there. You can change your primary colours. You can see here that I've just added in our logo. You would have in your business logo, your photo. And indeed, the other thing you can do is you can have it so that we automatically pick up comparable sales and comparable listings and comparable rentals. I've chosen to keep this off for the moment, and that'll make sense in a moment. If you have this on and you're working in a suburb, which is not particularly, I'd call them cookie cutter, so it's not a cookie cutter suburb, it's going to pick up 10 sales of the most recent sales, and they may not be comparable. So you're going to have to trawl through those and take them out. If you were dealing in a suburb, so for argument's sake, this was a 2-bedroom apartment in the East End of Adelaide, and I wanted to do 10 comparable sales, that's going to bring up really comparable sales. So that might be an easier way to do it. In this case, I prefer to leave them off. And as we go back and we come down, I can change that photo. I can change these photos to the one I want. But the most important part is I mentioned earlier that this is never actually technically transacted, so we don't have all of the details. What we can now do is jump into this area here and you can add those in. Okay. Now, by adding these in or changing these, it changes them for the report. It doesn't change them in gazetted information. So it's not changing them on Sailor system or back in the LTO. It is simply changing them for your report. So let's just say there's 3 bedrooms, there's 1 bathroom, and there's 2 car parks. We're happy with everything else, but we know that it was actually technically the owner has told us that it was built in 1988, and they swear until they're blue in the face that that was the year. So that's what we make it. The things you cannot change here are the zoning and the land use code. That is gazetted, but you can, if for instance this had been renovated and it wasn't brick, or indeed it used to be an old weatherboard and it was now brick, you can change these parameters as well. You can also put in your frontage. You can't change the LGA, clearly. You can include the zone. And the other one I was just going to show you here was a heritage indicator. Now, where I've ticked the heritage indicator and it stays blank, you would probably keep that out. But that heritage indicator covers off native title, it covers off native vegetation and state heritage. So for some of our country brethren who are listening, where a lot of the appraisals they do will have both native title and native veg, particularly in some of their appraisals, this will pick it up for their appraisal straight away.
Brilliant.
This one's not so important, so let's keep it out. Straight away, you can see here that the parameters of that have changed. You can either keep this sales history in or not. Clearly, there's been 1 sale of this property since 1993. It was off market, and you probably want to keep it in there. In terms of comparable sales, this is where it gets interesting. We purposely haven't self-done this. So what we're going to do is search for some sales. If there was a specific address that I knew that I wanted to add in, and that's the one I wanted to compare it to, I can do so by adding in the address, or I can actually search for sales. And with quick filters, I can quickly say 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 1 car park. I can say within 1 kilometre up to 500 kilometres. So let's just say we're going to go to 4 kilometres of the property. It's a house. And I want to go back 12 months. So all of a sudden you can see here I've got my target property here on the pink, and you can see the properties around it that this has picked up. So I can simply add these properties in. You can see here it's picked up another one here with $0 sale. We would all agree at $237,500. That's an off-market sale. So we're probably not going to include that. That said, if we did want to include that, because it was right next door, we could do so and make a comment. If you wanted to look at any of these properties, by the way, you can actually go to another view details, and you go into that property quite clearly and go through that property to ascertain whether it's a comparable property or not. And indeed, once you're on that property, if you wanted to change the photo that you see in the tabs, you can also change that photo.
Very easy.
So let's just grab some examples here. I'm not choosing these carefully, so please understand that. And let's just go back to report. So you can see here straight away that I've added some properties as comparable sales. Now I can sort those in a myriad of ways: distance from target, price, high to low, sale date. But I can also simply, I can also simply change the order that they sit in my presentation. So if my narrative was that I wanted this one at the very top, because that was my narrative, that it made most sense for what we were about to talk about in our listing presentation, I can have that at the very top. As I move down, exactly what I've done above, I can do for comparables. So once again, bedrooms, let's do 3 and 3, and bathrooms is 1 and 1. I'm doing, let's do 3 kilometres and show results. And exactly the same. Again, you've got your target property here in one colour, and you've got your properties listed on the right-hand side. Knowing Parramatta a little bit, you're all probably not going to compare properties on the other side of this main road. You're going to stay on the southern side of the road. So you can see these properties here, and it comes up with the dates, with the addresses. So once again, I'm not choosing these very carefully, so please understand that. I can hover over these and get the script. I can also go to view details of the properties. So let's just click these 3 or 4 without doing too much due diligence and go back to Builder. And you can see those are there. You can see here too, you can add a comment on any of these properties. So for instance, this might be, you might want to say, you can add whether they've been, how long they've been on market. And in terms of display settings, you can turn these on or off. You can turn your map settings on or off, and you can turn on and off how much information you want appearing. So if there was a comment on any of these that you wanted to make, you could make those comments, and that'll appear on your report as well.